They sat me in the very back row of my own daughter's school play, still in my waitress uniform, while the mothers who had never worked a double shift in their lives took every good seat up front. I want you to picture it, because I have played it back in my mind 1,000 times since. A packed school auditorium, warm and buzzing, every folding chair filled. Down at the front, the row of mothers I had come to know too well, in their nice coats and their blowouts, with their phones up and ready to film. And me, coming through the doors late and out of breath, still smelling faintly of coffee and fryer grease, my name tag still pinned crooked to my chest, being pointed by a smiling volunteer toward the only seat left in the building, the back row, the corner, so far from the stage that my 8-year-old daughter, when she finally walked out onto it, was going to be about the size of my thumbnail. My name is Jess. I am 29 years old. I have raised my daughter almost entirely on my own since she was 2, and I have spent most of the years since learning a particular lesson over and over again, which is exactly how small certain people will try to make you feel when they have decided that you do not belong. But here is the thing I need you to stay for tonight, because it is the whole reason I am telling you this at all. What happened on that stage in the 90 seconds after my daughter walked out onto it changed everything. It made every single one of those front row mothers turn around in their seats and look at me. It made a few of them cry, and it taught me something about strength and about being underestimated, and about what your children see when you think they are not watching, that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. By the end of this story, you are going to know exactly what my little girl did up there. But I need you to hold on to one thing as we begin. I almost did not come at all that night. I came within about 2 minutes of calling the school and saying I could not make it. And if I had listened to that tired, defeated voice in my head, I would have missed the most important 90 seconds of my entire life. So let me take you back to the beginning, not to the auditorium, to a diner on the wrong side of town, and a girl of 22 holding a newborn and a stack of unpaid bills, wondering how on earth she was going to do this alone. I had my daughter Lily when I was 21 years old, and her father was gone before she turned 2. I am not going to spend your evening telling you about him, because he does not deserve the airtime, and because in the end, this is not a story about the man who left. It is a story about the girl he left, and about the little person she and I became a team to raise. I will only tell you that he decided, somewhere in there, that being a father was harder than he wanted his life to be, and he chose a different one. And he has been mostly a rumor to my daughter ever since. A birthday card, some years, a phone number that changes, and me, just me, standing in the gap where 2 parents were supposed to be, trying to be wide enough to fill it. I have worked at the same diner since before Lily was born. It is not a glamorous place. The vinyl on the booths is cracked and taped, and the coffee is nothing to write home about, and my feet hurt in a way that I have simply stopped noticing, the way you stop noticing a sound that never turns off. But that diner has fed my daughter and kept a roof over her head for 8 years, and I am not ashamed of a single hour I have spent in it, no matter how many people have looked at my uniform and quietly decided they knew the whole of me from it. Let me tell you what a day actually looks like, so you understand the shape of the life those women decided they could read off my name tag. I am up at 5. I get Lily's lunch made and her hair braided and her backpack checked, and I get her to the before-school program because my shift starts before the school doors even open. Then I am on my feet for 8, 9, 10 hours carrying trays, wiping counters, smiling at people who do not smile back, counting tips in my head to see if today is a shoes day or a not yet day. Then I collect my daughter, and I become the other person I am, the one who helps with homework and makes dinner out of whatever stretches furthest and reads the bedtime story, and only after all of that, after she is asleep, do I sit down for the first time since dawn, at a kitchen table covered in bills, and try to make the numbers say something kinder than they are saying. That is a good day. That is a day where nothing went wrong, and I have strung thousands of those days together, one after another, alone, and kept my daughter fed and warm and laughing the whole way through, and I would like to see Whitney do it for a single week. Because that is the thing people do, you see. They look at a young woman in a diner uniform, a young woman who had a baby too early and got left, and they think they have read the whole book from the cover. They think tired means stupid. They think poor means careless. They think a woman who cleans up after strangers for tips could not possibly have anything they need to respect. And for a long time, I let them think it, because I did not have the energy to argue. And because when you are that tired, Being underestimated can feel almost like being left alone, which is its own kind of mercy. But I need you to understand something about me, because it matters for everything that comes later. I am quiet. I am not weak. There is a difference. And it is a difference that people like the ones I am about to tell you about never seem to learn until it is far too late. I do not make scenes. I do not raise my voice. I have learned that a woman who stays calm and says little holds a kind of power that a woman who screams gives away for free. My silence has never once been surrender. It has been me, watching and waiting, and deciding that most fights are not worth the pieces of myself they would cost me. I save myself for the fights that matter, and I have taught my daughter to do the same, though as you will see, my Lily has a fire in her that is entirely her own. When Lily started at her elementary school, I was so proud I could have burst. It was a good school, a real good one, in a nicer part of the district than we lived in, and she had gotten in through the zoning by the thinnest of margins because of where our little apartment sat on the map. I remember walking her in on the first day and thinking, she is going to have things I never had. She is going to have a real shot. I did not care in that moment that the other mothers in the drop-off line drove cars that cost more than I make in 3 years. I cared that my daughter had a shot. That was all. It did not take long for me to learn my place, though. It never does. There was a group of them, there always is. The mothers who run everything, who chair every committee, and organize every bake sale, and somehow have all day, every day, to be at that school. At the center of them was a woman named Whitney, and I want to be fair, because I have thought a great deal about Whitney since, and I do not believe she woke up in the morning intending to be cruel. I think it was simpler and sadder than that. I think Whitney had never once in her comfortable life had to imagine being me, and so she simply did not. To her, I was not a person to be unkind to. I was a person who was not quite all the way there. A blur in a diner uniform at the edge of the pickup line. Furniture. The first time it really stung was early on. The school sent around a sign-up for the Parent Volunteer Committee, the group that plans the parties and the trips and, as it happened, the big spring show. I signed up. Of course I signed up. I wanted to be part of my daughter's world at that school, more than I wanted almost anything. And when the meeting was scheduled, it was scheduled for 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. Then the next one, 10:30 on a Wednesday. Every single meeting right in the middle of a working person's day, at a time that only a person who did not work for a living could possibly attend. I asked, once, as gently as I could, whether any of the meetings might be held in the evening, so that parents who worked could take part. And Whitney looked at me with a smile so sweet it could have rotted a tooth. And she told me not to worry myself about it at all. She said they completely understood that some parents were just too busy, and that I should not feel any pressure, and that they would handle everything. She said the word busy the way you would say a slightly embarrassing word, quietly, with a little tilt of the head. And just like that, without one unkind word ever being spoken out loud, I understood that I had been dismissed. I was too busy. I was not one of them. I would not be handling anything. I could have made a scene. Part of me, the tired and furious part that lives just under my calm, wanted to. But I looked around that little circle of comfortable faces, all watching to see what the diner girl would do, and I decided, the way I have decided 100 times, that these women were not worth the pieces of myself that fighting them would cost. So I smiled back, just as sweetly, and I told Whitney that I appreciated it, and I went to work. I have found that nothing unsettles a person who expects you to crumble quite like your refusal to crumble. I want to say something here about that choice, the choice to stay quiet, because I know how it sounds. I know there are people who would say I should have spoken up, that I let them walk on me, that a stronger woman would have put Whitney in her place right there in that little circle. And maybe, but I have learned something about strength that the loud people never seem to learn. When you have as little cushion as I have, every fight costs you something you cannot get back. A scene at that school could have followed my daughter around for years. My anger, however justified, would have become the story, instead of their cruelty. So I made a trade, over and over, that those comfortable women never had to make. I traded the satisfaction of being heard for the safety of my child's good name. That is not weakness. That is a mother doing math that people with money never have to do. And I would make the same trade again 1,000 times, because it was never about winning against Whitney. It was about protecting Lily. It was always, only, about Lily. But it did not stop, of course. Those things never stop. they only find new shapes. There was the class parent directory that I somehow never got added to, so I missed things. There was the time my daughter came home and asked me why the other kids said she did not have a dad, and I had to sit on the edge of her little bed and find words for a thing that has no good words. There was an evening, a school fundraiser, when I overheard two of them talking about Lily, about how it was such a shame, a bright little thing like that, and you could just tell, they said, that she came from a home with no father, as though my daughter were a stain that showed. I stood behind a display board and I listened to two grown women pity my child for the crime of being mine, and I said nothing, and I went home, and I held my sleeping girl for an hour in the dark. I am telling you all of this not so that you will feel sorry for me. I have never wanted anyone's pity, which as it turns out is the one thing people like Whitney are most eager to give. I am telling you so that you understand exactly what the back row felt like, and exactly what it meant, when my daughter did what she did. You have to know how small they had spent 2 years trying to make me, to understand how it felt to be made, in 90 seconds, 10 feet tall. Now the spring show. The spring show was the biggest night of the school year, a whole production the third grade put on every year, with songs and a little play, and costumes the committee mothers spent months fussing over. And this year, Lily had been chosen for something special. Her teacher, a kind young woman named Miss Andrade, who was the one bright human light in that whole building, had given the children an assignment. Each of them had written a short piece about a person they looked up to, a hero, someone who inspired them. And out of the whole third grade, Miss Andrade had chosen just 3 of those pieces to be read aloud, by the children who wrote them, on the stage at the spring show, in front of the entire school and all the families. Lily was one of the 3. I cannot tell you how proud I was. My girl, my quiet, fierce little girl, chosen to stand up in front of everyone and read her own words. I asked her, over and over, what she had written, who her hero was, and she would only grin at me with that gap in her teeth and tell me that it was a surprise and that I would have to wait and see like everyone else. She guarded that secret for 2 whole weeks. I assumed it was some singer she liked, or a character from a show, or maybe her teacher. I want you to remember that I truly had no idea. That matters, for what comes next. I want to tell you about my Lily, so she is real to you, so she is not just a small figure on a stage. She is 8 years old and she is braver than I have ever been. She has a gap in her front teeth that she is not the least bit shy about, and a laugh that is far too big for her body, and a way of looking at the world head on that I hope to God this life never teaches her to lose. She notices everything. That is the thing about my girl. She is quiet the way I am quiet, watchful, taking it all in, but where I have learned to swallow what I see, Lily still says it right out loud, with the fearlessness of a child who has never yet been made small. I used to worry about that fire in her. I have stayed up nights worrying that the world would punish her for it the way it punishes girls who do not shrink. But that fire, it turned out, was about to become the best thing that ever happened to me. I just did not know it yet. All I knew those 2 weeks was that my daughter had a secret, and that her eyes danced every time I asked about it, and that whatever it was, she was proud of it. I had no idea it was me. And then, the day of the show, everything nearly fell apart. My shift manager at the diner, a decent enough man most days, told me that afternoon that one of the other waitresses had called out, and that he needed me to stay and cover the dinner rush. And I told him, my heart in my throat, that I could not, that my daughter was reading her piece on that stage at 6:30, that I had asked for this night off 3 weeks ago, and he had said yes. And he shrugged, in that way that people who hold a little power over you shrug, and he said that he understood, but that if I left him short on a Friday night, he could not promise me my shifts next week. He did not have to say the rest. I knew the rest. Rent was due in 9 days. Lily needed new shoes. The math of my life did not have any give in it at all. I want you to know how close I came. I stood in that steamy kitchen with my apron on, and I did the terrible arithmetic that poor mothers do, the arithmetic where you weigh your child's heart against your child's shoes, and there is no right answer, only 2 kinds of failing, and for about 2 minutes, I made the wrong choice. I told him I would stay. I actually told him I would stay. I went back out onto the floor, and I picked up my tray, and my eyes were burning, and I thought, she will understand. She is a good girl. She will understand that mommy had to work, and I will make it up to her, and it is only a school play, and there will be other ones. That is the lie poverty teaches you to tell yourself. There will be other ones. I had told myself that lie 100 times, about 100 small moments I had missed, the recitals and the field days and the little Tuesday afternoons that do not come back. I had missed so much of her already, not because I did not love her, but because loving her meant working, and working meant missing, and that is a trap with no bottom that mothers like me live inside every single day. And standing there on that diner floor with my tray, I felt the whole weight of every moment I had already lost pressing down on me, and something in me simply refused to add this one to the pile. And then I thought about her scanning that crowd for my face. I put the tray down. I took off my apron. I told my manager that I was sorry, and that I was leaving, and that I would deal with whatever came next when it came, but that I was not going to miss my daughter tonight for any job on this earth. And he said some things, and I did not really hear them, because I was already untying my apron and grabbing my bag, and I did not even have time to change out of my uniform. I drove across town with my hands shaking on the wheel, still in my diner clothes, my name tag still on, and I ran into that auditorium 11 minutes late. And that is how I came to be standing at the back of a packed school auditorium, sweating and breathless in my waitress uniform, while a smiling volunteer looked me over, taking in the whole of me in one glance, and pointed me to the only seat left, the back row, the far corner, where I stood out in my uniform, among all those nice coats, like exactly the thing they had always believed me to be. I saw Whitney turn around from her seat in the second row, front and center, phone already mounted on a little tripod she had brought. I saw her find me at the back with her eyes. I saw the small, satisfied smile. And I sat down in that corner, so far from the stage, and I felt every ounce of the smallness they had spent 2 years pouring into me, and I thought, I gave up my shifts for this. I am going to lose hours I cannot afford to lose, and I cannot even see her, and they have put me in the back like something to be hidden. And for one moment, one weak and human moment, I felt the tears come, and I hated that they might see them. I sat there in that folding chair, and I looked at the backs of all those heads between me and the stage, all those nice coats, and I felt the old familiar shame trying to climb up my throat. I became aware of my uniform in a way I had managed not to be all evening, of the coffee stain on my sleeve, of the name tag, of the way I did not match a single other person in that room. I remember pulling my thin cardigan closed over the diner logo on my shirt, the way you cover a wound. I remember a woman beside me, a stranger, glancing at me and then away, and doing that small arithmetic that people do, filing me under a heading, and I remember wanting to tell her, "You have no idea what I did to be in this chair tonight. You have no idea what this cost me." But I did not say it. I never say it. I just pulled my cardigan closed and I sat up straight and I fixed my eyes on that stage, because whatever else was true, whatever they thought of me, I had made it. Against everything, I had made it, and my daughter was going to know I was there. Then the lights went down and the show began, and I made myself breathe, because whatever else was true, my daughter was about to walk onto that stage, and I was going to see it if I had to stand on my chair. The little ones did their songs. There was a dance number where half of them forgot the steps, and it was the most wonderful thing I had ever seen. And I sat forward on the edge of my folding chair in the back corner, straining, watching for one face among all those small faces, and every time I thought I saw her, my heart leapt, and then it was some other little girl with brown hair, and the not knowing, the distance, the sheer smallness of that stage from where they had put me was its own quiet agony. And then Miss Andrade came to the microphone and said that it was time for something special. She explained to the whole auditorium about the hero assignment, about how every child had written about someone who inspired them, and how 3 had been chosen to share their words tonight. And she read the first name, a little boy, who came out and read a sweet, wobbly piece about his grandfather, and everyone clapped. And the second, a little girl who had written about an astronaut, and everyone clapped again. And then Miss Andrade said my daughter's name, and my Lily walked out onto that stage, in the middle of that enormous room, this tiny brave figure in the green dress we had found at the second-hand shop, and pressed so carefully that morning, holding a single piece of paper in 2 hands, and she walked up to that microphone that was almost as tall as she was, and my whole heart stopped. Because the first thing my daughter did, before she read a single word, was look for me. I watched her lift her chin and scan the crowd, those bright, searching eyes moving across all the front rows, all the nice coats, all the faces turned up toward her, looking for her mother. And she did not find me, because I was not where a mother was supposed to be. I was not in the front. I was in the back corner, in the dark, in my uniform, where they had put me. And I watched my little girl's face begin to fall, right there on that stage, in front of everyone, as she looked, and could not find the one face she needed. And I understood in a rush of pure animal love that she was not nervous about the words. She was frightened that I had not come. So I stood up. I did not think about it. I did not care, in that moment, about Whitney, or the coats, or the smallness, or the tears on my face. My daughter was looking for me, and I would have torn that building apart to be found. I stood straight up out of my chair in the back corner, and I lifted my hand, and I did not shout, because I have never been a woman who shouts, but I stood there in my waitress uniform under the lights with my hand raised, so that the one person in that entire room who mattered could find me. And she did. I will remember the look on my daughter's face until the day I die. That searching, falling face in one instant, when her eyes found mine across all those rows, broke open into the widest, most radiant, most relieved smile I have ever seen on a human being. She saw me. From all the way up there, past all of them, she found her mother standing in the back, and her whole body lit up with it. It was the look of a child who has been holding her breath without knowing it, finally breathing. It was relief and joy and love all at once, and it was aimed, across a room that had tried to hide me, directly and only at me. In all my life, no one has ever looked for me the way my daughter looked for me in that moment, and no one has ever found me with such pure and total gladness. If I live to be 100, I will still be able to close my eyes and see that small face finding mine in the dark at the back of the room. And then my Lily, 8 years old, in her second-hand green dress, looked back down at her piece of paper, and she leaned into that too-tall microphone, and she began to tell an entire auditorium about her hero. And her hero was me. I did not know. I swear to you on everything I have, I did not know that was what she had written. I had thought a singer, a cartoon, her teacher, and instead my little girl stood up in front of the whole school and every one of those families, and she told them about her mother. She told them that her mom worked at a diner, and said it like it was a wonderful thing, like it was something to be proud of, with no idea that half the room had used that exact fact to write me off. She told them that her mom's feet hurt at the end of every day, but that she still read her a story every single night, even the tired nights, even the late ones. She told them that some kids had a mom and a dad, and that she just had a mom, but that her mom was so much that she never once felt like anything was missing. She told them that her mom did not have a lot of money, but that she had never gone without a single thing she actually needed, because her mom went without instead, and thought she did not notice, but she noticed. She told the entire room that her mother was the strongest person she had ever met, and that when she grew up, she did not want to be a singer or an astronaut. She wanted to be exactly like her mom. And then she looked up from her paper right to the back of the room, right at me, and she told everyone that her mom had promised she would be there tonight, and that her mom always kept her promises, and that was how she knew, even when she could not see her, that her mom was somewhere in this room. Because her mom had never broken a promise to her in her whole entire life. I was not the only one crying by then. I want you to know that. From the back corner of that auditorium, through my own tears, I watched it happen. I watched the front rows go quiet and still. I watched shoulders start to shake. I watched those women, those comfortable women in their nice coats who had spent 2 years deciding exactly how much I was worth, begin, one by one, to turn around in their seats. To look for the woman my daughter was describing, to find the diner waitress in the back row that they had hidden away, and to understand, all at once, that the person that extraordinary child adored more than anyone on earth was me, the one they had put in the back. I saw Whitney turn around. Her phone was forgotten on its little tripod, and the look on her face was not a smile anymore. It was something else, something that looked a great deal like shame, and underneath the shame, something that looked almost like grief, the grief of a person realizing, far too late, the size of the thing they had failed to see. But I did not care about Whitney. I want to be honest with you about that, because it is the truest part of this whole story. In the moment I had dreamed would be my vindication, the moment all those faces finally turned to look at me with something other than pity, I found that I did not care about them at all. I was not looking at Whitney. I was looking at my daughter, because none of them had ever been the point. My little girl had been the point the entire time, and then Lily finished. She folded her piece of paper back up in her two small hands, and Miss Andrade started to clap, and the whole auditorium came up out of its seats. But my daughter did not bow, and she did not walk off the stage the way the other two children had. My daughter, in front of everyone, jumped down off the front of that stage, and she started to run. She ran up the center aisle, past the front rows, past all the nice coats, past Whitney, past every person who had ever looked at me sideways, her little shoes slapping the floor and her green dress flying, all the way to the very back of that enormous room, to the corner, to me. And she launched herself into my arms so hard that she nearly knocked me off my feet, and I caught her, the way I have caught her every single day of her life, and I held my whole world against my chest in my stupid diner uniform in the back row, and I did not feel small anymore. I have never in my life felt bigger than I did in that corner, holding my girl, while a room full of people who had misjudged us both watched a child run the length of a building to reach the mother she was proud of. She whispered into my neck that she was so glad I came, and I whispered back that I would always come, always. That there was no place on this earth I would rather be than wherever she was. And I held her there, in the back corner, and I felt her heart going fast against mine from the running, and I breathed in the smell of her hair, and I understood that this, right here, this small warm weight in my arms, was the only front row I had ever needed. Let them keep their good seats. My whole world had just run the length of a building to stand in the back with me, so now you know what my daughter did on that stage. She did not know she was doing anything remarkable. She thought she was just telling the truth about her mom. She had no idea about the meetings I was left out of, or the things those women said behind the display boards, or the back row, or any of it, because I had spent 8 years making very sure that the weight I carried never once landed on her small shoulders. And so in her innocence, my Lily did the one thing that all my careful silence never could. She stood up in front of the very people who had decided I was nothing, and without even knowing they were there, she told them exactly who I was. And they had no choice but to believe her, because there is nothing on this earth more honest than the way a child talks about a parent they feel safe with. I did not get an apology from Whitney that night, and I want to tell you that I did not need one, and mostly that is true. But I will tell you what I did get. As the auditorium emptied out, Miss Andrade found me in the back, still holding Lily's hand, and she took my other hand in both of hers, and she told me quietly that in all her years of teaching, she had never read a piece quite like my daughter's, and that whatever I was doing at home, I should not let anyone in this world make me doubt it for a single second. And a few of the other mothers, on their way out, caught my eye, and gave me small, uncertain nods, the kind of nods that people give when they do not have the words for the apology they know they owe. I took the nods. I did not need more than that. And here is what I have carried with me from that night, and what I want to leave with you, because I think there is someone listening right now who needs it more than they know. For years, I let people convince me that quiet meant weak, that tired meant less, that a uniform and a hard job and doing it all alone made me somebody to be seated in the back. And I was wrong to ever half believe them, because all that time, while those women were deciding I was nothing, there was one small person watching me very closely, watching the double shifts and the bedtime stories and the going without, adding it all up in her heart. And when the moment came, it turned out that the only opinion that had ever mattered had been keeping score the whole time, and had come to a very different conclusion than Whitney and her committee ever did. They can put you in the back row. Let them. The people who love you will cross an entire room to find you there. And the ones who matter, the small ones watching, they see everything. They see the shifts you cover and the meals you skip and the promises you keep when you are too tired to stand. Nothing you do for them is wasted. And nothing you do for them is invisible, no matter how invisible the rest of the world tries to make you feel. I think about that night often, on the hard days, and there are still plenty of hard days. The rent is still due, my feet still hurt. Whitney and her committee did not turn into different people overnight, and my life did not suddenly become easy just because a room full of strangers finally saw me clearly for 90 seconds. That is not how real life works, and I would never lie to you and say it was. What changed was not my circumstances. What changed was something inside me, because I had spent years, if I am honest, half believing them, half believing that I really was less, that the back row was really where I belonged, that a woman like me should be grateful for the scraps of respect she was thrown. And my daughter, without ever meaning to, reached into me and pulled that lie out by the root. She showed me myself the way she saw me, and I have never been able to unsee it since. On the hardest nights now, when the numbers at that kitchen table will not behave, and the loneliness of doing it all alone sits down heavy on my chest, I think of my girl running the length of that auditorium, and I remember what I am to the one person whose opinion was ever going to matter, and I stand back up, and I keep going. So if you are out there tonight doing it all on your own, in a uniform someone looks down on, in a life someone underestimates, holding it together with tired hands while nobody claps, I want you to hear me. Someone is watching you the way my Lily watched me. Someone is keeping score, and one day, when you least expect it, they are going to stand up in a crowded room and tell the whole world what you already are. I see you, you are stronger than they know, and I will be right here,